not one, but two. I'm going to do one this week and one next week. Fathers are a lot harder than mothers are. I can get mamas in one leg, but fathers takes two. We had a bad Friday, didn't we? Oh, sad, sad Friday, back Friday. Supreme Court once again broke the law, overruled the will of the American people, legalizing same-sex marriage. Can't get it through Congress. Congressmen can't vote for it because the American people will vote them out of office. So they push it through the Supreme Court. It's like it did back in '73 when they pushed through the Roe versus Wade case, making it legal to kill innocent babies. And now they have done it once again. Black Friday. We'll be hearing a lot more about Black Friday in the near future. Next couple of years, we'll see a lot of changes taking place. At least until our president goes out of office. He doesn't have to run for an election. Black Friday. Sad, sad day. Sad day. Happy Father's Day. Talk about you. Fathers, you are gods. Believe it or not, you are. Nobody wants to be a god because nobody wants that kind of responsibility, but fathers are. Ask your very young son or daughter what they think about you. My father can beat up your father. My father's smarter than your father. Ask your child what they think about their daddy. Their daddy's God. There's nothing he can't do. There's nothing he doesn't know. And if he says something, it's the truth. Because my daddy knows everything. And that makes fathers a god, at least to little people. As they age a little bit, they'll learn the truth. They start finding out our flaws, slowly but surely. The first few flaws is really heartbreaking. Because this perfect, infallible man made a mistake. They get a little off-center because of that. I've said that to say this. You have no idea how much influence you have on your child. More influence than you think you do. After all, you are God. You know, they say most of a child's character is developed by the time they're 6 years old. What they think, don't think, their philosophical views, these things are determined by the time they're 6 years old. That's during the age when Daddy begins as God and slowly begins to come out from being God. At least in the eyes of his child. Your children take what you say as the gospel. Your children believe whatever they hear come out of your mouth. If you say something derogatory about church or about preachers or about the things God has said, your child will pick that up. And there's a very good chance that may become their thought too. Fathers have more influence on the child in those matters than mothers do. You can tell that by the various polls that are out there. You know, when a mother and father both are vested in the church, the percentage of children that remain faithful to the Lord after they leave home is up in the 90-somethings. I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's 90-something percentile. And it's because of the father. Because if it's only the mother, it's down around 60-something. But if the father is devoted to God, that number shoots up to 90-something percent of the children are faithful to God after they grow up and leave home. That's because of the father's influence over his own children. You see, fathers are gods to their children, at least for a time. And then they learn the truth. But for that time, a lot of their beliefs are going to be developed. And it's important to understand that. You fathers Do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord. I'm going to break that down to a negative. Do not provoke your children to wrath, and then a positive. Bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord. One verse, you've got a negative command and a positive command. What we're going to do today is study the negative. God willing, next week we'll look at the positive. But I want to look at the negative command, see what Paul wants us to know. Chasten your son while there is hope, Solomon wrote. Notice the two words, chasten and then the word hope. Chasten your son while there is hope. The clock is ticking. You got plenty of time when a kid's little. That clock keeps on ticking. No matter what you do, don't do. You can put it off to another day, but the clock keeps on ticking. And time goes by. And one day you look at your son or daughter and they're around 7 years old and you think, whoa, what happened? They went from nothing to something almost overnight, it seems like. But they're only 7 years old. I still got plenty of time. So I think I'm going to do this, and then later on I'm going to start taking him fishing once in a while. And the clock keeps on ticking. Chasten your son while there is hope. Because there comes a time when you lose the opportunity to influence your children the way you would like to. Because they become their own person with time. The word chasten there is a verb, and in our context, back in Proverbs, it relates to the training up of a child, including instruction, counsel, discipline, and correction. It's not just spanking. It has to do with child development. Help this child become an adult. That's what the father's job is. Help your child become an adult. Help them become a responsible person when they come of age. Help them to think right. Help them in their knowledge. Help them to be wise. Help your child to develop while you can, because the clock's ticking. And you will lose that window of opportunity. It's happened to most of us here today. It's over. What we did, what we didn't do, it's over now. Oh, we still got a little influence, but it's only a little. Because they got a spouse. And their spouse has a lot of influence with them. They're their own person now. And they talk to other people who have views and thoughts about everything under the sun. And they're exposed to all that now. And you don't have time to sit around and talk about the philosophical views like you once could, because that window of opportunity is gone. So I guess I'm talking to fathers of young children especially, because you're the ones that Solomon's talking to. You're the ones that God's talking to through Solomon. Make the most of your time while you have the time to do it. The English Standard Version translates that word chasten, discipline. And the word discipline, of course, simply means training. Train your child while there is hope, or while you can, because you will lose the opportunity. He said, do not provoke your children to wrath, but you've got to discipline your children. Obviously, you go so far, but don't go too far. There's a line there. We can't see it, but there's a line where we have to be mindful of discipline, but not go so far that we provoke the child to wrath. Okay? And children are different. And because children are different, there's no definitive statement that can be made other than the fact that we have to know our own children. Train the child, but don't cross the line and make them angry, because that'll turn out for bad. Motivated by love, I think, is the biggest help of all. If a person is motivated by love, if they have a goal you aspire to, and the goal I think you should aspire to is to give your child everything they need. to be the kind of adult that God wants them to be. I think that's a good goal. You got to remember, this person is God's child. It's our child for 70, but God's for all of eternity. God is the one that created this person. He's the one that put the spirit in the body that was formed in the womb of the mother. It's his baby. And he's given you the responsibility of training his baby. And he wants you to use that time wisely and help his baby become an adult that'll behave the way he wants him to. That's a big responsibility. Biggest responsibility you got. Biggest responsibility any of us got is raising our children. It's kind of frightening when you stop and think about what's involved when you start talking about eternity. In the first century, fatherly love almost didn't exist. As a matter of fact, familial love almost didn't exist. It was a cold culture. Much colder than ours is today. People think, our country is at the brink. Oh, you ever seen the Roman Empire? It was much worse than the Roman Empire. Probably the coldest nation that ever existed at this time in history. The Apostle Paul in Romans chapter 1 verse 31 refers to the lack of familial love among the Gentiles. In your King James Bible, it says unloving, which is not a very good translation because it has to do with the lack of love in the family. That's what the word actually involves. Family members don't love one another. Father doesn't love his child or his wife. Wife doesn't love her husband or her children. And the children don't love the parents. That was the culture of the first century. Sounds like a horrible place to live, doesn't it? That's the way it was. Back at that time, there was a law, a Roman law, Patria Potestas. And that law basically gave fathers all rights over every person in his household. Slaves, his wife, his children. He had the right to sell them if he chose to. He could sell his wife. He could sell one of his kids. He could sell his daughter as a prostitute if he chose to. Or his son, because that was very common at the time. He could put him to death. And he didn't have to give an account to anybody. If he wanted to kill his wife, he could just kill his wife and nobody would question it. Because that was the law that gave him the authority to do that. And they did. It was a very cold, cold culture. When a newborn child was born, there was a question, keep the child or not. And what they would do, they would lay the baby at the feet of the daddy. And he would do one of two things. He would either pick the child up, which means he'll keep it, or walk off, which means get rid of it. He doesn't want it. Now, this is his son or daughter. That evening, the fate of the discarded child would be determined. There was a place where all unwanted infants, newborn infants that day, there was a place that they were taken to. And people would buy them if they wanted them. Now, you would buy an infant, of course, because you wanted a slave. You needed a slave. You might buy an infant because you hoped the girl infant would grow up and be attractive and could be a prostitute and make you money that way. So they sold some of the babies that evening, people wanting to make a slave or a prostitute out of them. And then they would all go home, and whatever was left laying there was left laying there. And they would die. That's what Paul was alluding to in Romans 1:31. There was no familial love at that time. And the law of Rome gave fathers the right to make those awful decisions. In 1 BC, a man named Hilarion wrote to his wife Alice. He was out of town. He was down in Alexandria, Egypt. And he wrote to his wife in Rome, and here's what he said. Heartiest greetings. Note that we are still even now in Alexandria. Do not worry if, when all others return, and I remain in Alexandria. I beg and beseech you to take care of the little child. He's talking about his child, his son. And as soon as we receive wages, I will send them to you. If, good luck to you, apparently she was pregnant when he left to go off on this journey. If, good luck to you, and you have a child, here's what you do. If it is a boy, let it live. If it is a girl, expose it to the elements. She would take the baby to this place where they took the babies, and the baby would lay there, of course, until it died. That was life in the Roman Empire. Not attractive. Seneca's a very well-known senator in Rome, the city of Rome. And in one of his diatribes, on and on and on, he said, we slaughter a fierce ox, we strangle a mad dog, we plunge a knife into a sick cow. Children born weak or deformed, we drown. He's putting a child in the same category as a fierce ox, a mad dog, or a sick cow. There's no difference. Get rid of it. Last Friday was a sad day. But not that bad. Not yet. And then the Roman people heard this. You fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the love. Love your children. Man, what a strange thing to hear. Love your children. Train your children. Take time to help your children grow up and become adults. Jesus Christ is said to have turned the world upside down, and he did. There's no doubt about it. He put an end to a lot of things that went on back at that time. Even though he never condemned slavery explicitly, he did condemn it by his teachings of love for your neighbor and your fellow man. It was only a matter of time once that door was cracked open. It was only a matter of time until things like slavery would go away. Because people learned to care. Instead of being indifferent, instead of being callous, instead of living in such a cold, cold society, people learned to care about each other. And it did, in fact, change the world, turned it upside down, slowly but surely. There are some ways that I can think of that a father might provoke his children. And I want to talk with you for a few minutes about it. I've already raised my children. All my mistakes are on a page of history now. Things I may have done right. BR probably set that one on fire. But I'm kidding, BR. I love you. These are some things I think is important for what it's worth. Number one, neglect. Do not neglect your child. John MacArthur said the primary cause for children being in foster homes today is not divorce. It's not financial destitution or poverty. It's not because the parents died, simply the disinterest of the parents. They have no interest in their children. They don't care very much about their children. They neglect them. You know, when you go to Walmart, you see little kids, pretty small, running around in Walmart without any kind of supervision in sight. There's probably somebody there at Walmart, but these kids are running around like a bunch of monkeys on the loose, and no supervision. It's not uncommon to see somebody that works at Walmart running up the aisle after one of these people. They're kind of turned out to their own. I remember the first time I took Chris to school when he was in the kindergarten grade, and we had to go into the gym, and them kids, wow, it was It was bad. And I thought about bringing him back home. I was afraid they'd hurt him. A lot of kids, they're rough and tough. Man, I mean, they're tough. They're kind of on their own. They do their own thing. Some of them, they fix their own breakfast. I mean, little kids. They get home from school and there's nobody there. They go and they do what they can find to do. Sometimes it's not harmful, sometimes it is. But it's easy to see that a lot of children are neglected. If you drive around my road at night, there's a possibility that you might kill some kids. Because there's kids that walk up and down the road over there. And you know what it's like on a country road, how dark it is. And these kids don't wear lights on their bodies. And you'll be going down the road, and all of a sudden, whoa, there'll be a kid there in the road. Scare you to death. Might be 4 or 5 of them. And sometimes, I don't know, it looks like maybe they jump at you to watch you go around them. And I'm thinking to myself, where's their mother and father? There's nobody around anywhere. A lot of kids are neglected. Sometimes children are neglected by good parents. Real good people. They don't mean to. They don't even know they're doing it. But they neglect their children because they're busy. Man, it's hard not to be busy in the world we live in. There's just too much to do. There's too much going on. And we spend a lot of time running all over the place. You got to work, you got to make money, you got to take care of the house, you got to take care of the yard. You got to go to a ball game, you got to do this. There's always something to do. And without even realizing it, parents, trying to be very good parents, don't spend time talking to their children about life. Why we're here. Where we're going. And the children, they don't know. Children feel neglected. I've talked to a lot of kids who go to camp. There's a lot of kids who go to camp. I've talked to a lot of kids, and they feel neglected. The father isn't interested in what they're doing. Well, have you ever told? Oh, no, I would never tell him that. That would hurt his feelings. Well, won't you just tell him and see how he feels about it? I don't think they did. But they felt neglected, and they resented it. They don't say nothing. They love their daddy. But they do resent it. And it does hurt them. Because, they don't think he loves me. Not as much as, work. Not as much as mowing the yard. There's always something that Daddy has to do. And it doesn't give him much time for me. I grieve over that a lot these days. I was a preacher and I worked too. Had an honest job. I'd work all day, then I'd preacher it all night, do what preachers do. It took up a whole lot of my time. You had to go here, go yonder, go to the hospital. Every night there's something to do. I did what I could to spend quality time with my children. I had to go to Nashville all the time. Back then everybody went to Nashville, the hospital. So I bought a van, a big van. And while we drove from here to Nashville, we talked. No radios, no nothing. There was a TV in the van, but we didn't use it because we talked. We talked about God. We talked about things. My kids were always very inquisitive about God. They always had questions. So I would try to use that time to spend time with my kids. And it bothers me today that sometimes if I had to do it again, would I do it the same way? And I don't know that I would. My kids turned out real good. Don't misunderstand me. I'm very proud of my children. They've never given me any grief, except one time Chris got an F. Boy, that gave me grief. Whew. I couldn't sleep, and I was tore to pieces. I went to work, and they could tell I was trouble. What's the matter? My son's giving me trouble, and they all thought, oh, he's in dope. What happened? What's going wrong? He got an F on his report card. Everybody started laughing. It was a big deal to me. That was the worst thing he ever did. What it was, him and Michael Netherton were sitting together in class. Talk, all the time talking. Talking you can't learn. And he got an F. BR went down there, told the teacher, asked the teacher, what's going on. She said, I think it's where him and Michael sits together. BR said, that's easy. Put him over in the other corner over yonder. Put him over in the other corner. He came up to an A. She fixed that, and I got to go back to sleep again. I'm not grumbling about the way my kids turned out, but sometimes it does bother me as to what kind of a daddy I really was. I hate to see anybody make a mistake. Don't neglect your kids. Spend time with them. Spend all the time with them that you need to. And that'll work well for you and your family. Number 2, overprotection. Just the opposite, huh? Just the opposite. Some people are so protective of their children that their children are not allowed to mature. They don't mature and become adults that can stand on their own 2 feet. They're afraid. They're always afraid because they never learned. They were smothered over, constantly smothered over. And they were never given the opportunity to make the wrong decision and get hurt. Kids, they got to get hurt. They got to learn sometimes that, if you do the wrong thing, it can be painful. They got to get hurt. There were times where I let my kids, I knew what was going to happen. I let them do it anyway. It wasn't going to kill them, but it was going to get their attention, and they would learn a lesson. Sometimes people smother their children. They protect them so much that the child is fearful. Most of the time it's mothers that do that. And the child can't get away from mama. They're tied to mama. Hip to hip, joint to joint. They can't get away from mama because they need mama. And it's hard for a boy, especially. It's hard for him to grow up and be tied to his mama and look for a wife. Because most of the time, wives don't like that. Or it's hard for a girl to be tied to her parents. You can overprotect the child and keep them from growing up so fearful that something's going to happen. Other kids do it. Other kids do it, nothing happens, but your child's different. I don't know, maybe they got a handicap or something, I don't know. But theoretically, they should be able to do what other kids do and survive the ordeal. But some parents are very overprotective, and the kid will resent that when they grow up. They'll resent it. That smothering effect, I hear that more than anything, except maybe neglect. They never let me do anything unless they were with me. And they didn't like it. Favoritism, being partial to the better athlete, being partial to the one that's better at academics, being better or being closer to one because they're more attractive than the other. There's a lot of things that can cause people to be favorites. In the Bible, there were parents who had favorites, one over the other, and it always turned out badly. And it still will today, because the one who's not the favorite, they file that away. Because they know. Well, they won't say nothing. But they know. And it's not good. Pushing achievement beyond reasonable boundaries is a problem. This time expecting too much out of a child. Expecting a child to get an A and they're a B student. You can push and push and push and push, and they're still going to be a B student. There's a difference in people. Some people are A students, some people are B students. Some people are good athletes, some people are not good athletes. You know, all of us have got our niche. And trying to push one child to do what another child does just because another child can do it, that's not wise. And it's actually what the Lord discourages us doing. Not allowing a child to mature at a normal pace. A 5-year-old is 5-year-old. You shouldn't try to make her an 8-year-old. Well, my 5-year-old is smart enough to be a 6-year-old. Okay, 6, I'll buy 6. But don't try to make her an 8-year-old. Sometimes, you see little girls, they're dressed like teenagers. And you wonder why. What's going on here? Why do people think that way? To dress a little bitty girl in such a way. She's a little girl. If she skins her knees, it's not the end of the world. I think a 5-year-old should be a 5-year-old. It's okay to play and be goofy when you're 5. It's not good, I don't think, to expect a 5-year-old to behave like a 12 or 13-year-old. They don't think that way. Solomon said, train up a child in the way he should go. When he is old, he will not depart from it. Notice what he said. Train up a child in the way he should go. You want a baseball player, and your son doesn't want to play baseball. You want a girl that'll be in a beauty contest. But you've got a daughter that could care less about beauty contests. She'd rather play football. This happens a lot. People try to live vicariously through their children. Make their children do either what they did when they were a child or what they wish they could have done when they were a child. But if you weren't a good baseball player when you was a child, probably because you wasn't a good baseball player. And I don't think it's fair for someone who wasn't a good baseball player to expect his son to be a good baseball player. That's what Solomon's talking about. Train up a child in the way he should go. Literally what that says is, train up a child in the way he leans. There's a certain way your child is going to lean. You're going to see that as they mature, as they grow, develop. You're going to watch that child start going in a certain direction. Your little girl may be a tomboy, and you're going to watch her as she moves over in that direction. And if you try to take that tomboy and make a beauty queen out of her, you're going to have your hands full. Solomon said, train up a child in the way that they lean. If your child doesn't want to play baseball, don't make him play baseball. Maybe he's a thinker. And instead of spending time on a ball field, he wants to spend time in a book. Maybe he one day wants to be a physician or an attorney. Maybe he's got aspirations in that direction. He may not know it, but he may be leaning that way. If you see him more interested in exercising his mind on a computer, doing studies of various sorts, pay attention to the way he's leaning, because this is the direction he's going. I went this way. I don't want my kids to go this way, but let's say I would have went this way and it was a good way. It's not fair of me to make my child go the way I did. They might lean over this way. And that's what Solomon's saying. Pay attention to your child. Watch which way he leans. and train him in that direction. That's where he's going to be skilled. That's where he's going to perform at his best. He may work in a grocery store. He may be a physician. He may want to be a cop. He may want to be a preacher. But let him go the way he wants to go, and help him achieve his goals. Number 6, never complimenting a child. That's a bad move. You should compliment kids when they do good. You know, we do say something when they do bad. At least I always did. We should say something when they do good. Not sacrificing for a child. I don't have time, so let's not go into that. Using love as reward and punishment. Sometimes we make a mistake. We don't mean to. But sometimes we make a mistake. When our kid does good, we'll hug them and say, "Oh, I love you so much." And when our children doesn't do something exceptionally well, we don't say anything. And the child picks up on this. When I do good, Mama loves me. When I don't do good, she doesn't say anything about love. Sometimes, unintentionally, we use love as a reward. "Oh, you do so good. I love you so much." That's a good thing to do, by the way. But it's also to remind them that we love them when they don't do anything special. Verbal abuse, of course, is beating somebody with our words, and that is so easy to do. Oh my, it is so easy for us to do. We are to train up a child in the way they should go. Our job as parents is to try to help our child become the best adult they can be. We train them academically, and we try to train them spiritually. Our primary goal, of course, is that they will become children of God, that they will live by the Word of God, that they will go to heaven, that our whole family together, hand in hand, will all go to heaven and there be with God forever and ever. Amen. That's goal number 1. But it's also very important to help our child be a good, mature adult that is capable of standing on their own 2 feet. A person who can take care of their own family when they have their own family. A person who's not afraid to live life, but sees it instead as an opportunity to excel. You have a responsibility that's absolutely amazing and wonderful and terrifying. I pray that you do well. If you're not a Christian, we've been put in this world for a good reason. That's to learn God, to get to know Him, love Him, and walk with Him. Those who do turn to God, wanting His friendship. To obtain it, we are to believe what He says, repent of our sins, stop sinning, be immersed in water, being born again, and then walking in the light of His Word from that point forward. As Christians, we step out of the light. A lot of times we step out of the light. More than we care to admit, but honestly, a lot more than we like. Sometimes, most of the time, we can take care of our own failures by ourselves in our closet. But sometimes something's got us, and it won't turn us loose. And we need help. We need the prayers of our family. This is the time, if you need God's forgiveness and an expression of love from your brothers and sisters. We ask you to come while we stand and while we sing.